Abu Huraira narrated a hadith attributed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When a non-believer goes into the grave, Allah will send a 99 dragon. Each one of those dragons has 99 heads. Each one of those heads will have 7 heads of snakes, biting him, torturing him till Judgment Day. And if one of those dragons blows his fire out, will burn all the vegetation on earth. That is about the torture in the grave. If a believer in Allah goes into the grave will expand the length of 70 arms, and it will have a light like a full moon, so bright, so white, so open, so comfortable. Let's discuss this. Is this based on the Quran? Is this a factual thing or just a delusion? We will discuss it next about the torture in the grave and the comfort of the grave. Assalamu alaikum. So the concept that a non-believer gets tortured forever till Judgment Day in the grave, that sounds very draconian. It sounds very strange and weird. But where does this concept that is so predominant and common within Islam, pretty much every Muslim believes in the torture in the grave or the glorious comfort of the grave? Are these facts based on the Quran, on the verses in the Quran, or is it just a hadith that was narrated by Abu Huraira? Basically, it is based on a hadith that Abu Huraira narrated, and few hadiths that are quoted. And we all know that the books of hadith are written by men, not by Allah. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to say about the torture in the grave? Is it fact in the Quran? Is it clearly spelled out in the Quran? Does it really, without any ambiguity, tell us that a non-believer punishment will start in the grave and a believer comfort will start in the grave? What does the Quran say about it? So actually, this is a very, very interesting and it's very, very scary concept that a Muslim is, wow. Even if a Muslim that have sinned, the punishment for his sin will start in the grave, as we are told, till Judgment Day. So everybody who is not a Muslim died already is being tortured in the grave. It sounds pretty strange, but yet it is very common. Discussion about it, if you discuss it with Salafi or Wahhabi or mainstream traditional Islamic theology, they would think you're crazy because it is such an established fact. It's such a principle that everybody that I know throughout the world of the mainstream Muslim scholars. I'm talking about at least in the Sunnah branch of Islam. They believe that, yeah, non-believers will be tortured in the grave. Even a Muslim who are committed sin, their punishment will start in the grave. But how did they come to this conclusion? What verse in the Quran that is clearly stating this fact? On the contrary, there isn't any. There is just speculation. Just like everything else in the Quran. Just like about so many different things. They would take a verse in the Quran, they would read it, and they interpret it to mean, remotely mean. Yeah, that's the conclusion they draw. It's not spelled clearly without any ambiguity in very specific words. There are few verses in the Quran. If you listen to this debate within the Salafi, within any other group, they'll give you 2 or 3 verses from the Quran to prove their point. Yes, there is going to be punishment in the grave. And one of those verses that I'm going to read a few verses that people use to prove, yeah, there is punishment in the grave. One of those verses that they always use, this verse. I'll read it in Arabic. النار يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا ويوم تقوم الساعة أدخلوا آل فرعون أشد العذاب. So basically this verse is talking about Al Fir'aun, the people of Fir'aun, the elite within Al Fir'aun. The fire which they had, it's translated, Yusuf Ali translated this way, the fire which they had been made to contemplate morning and evening. And here they take this morning and evening 2 words and say, yeah, see, when they are in the grave in the morning and the evening, they will be punished in the grave. The fire which they had been made to contemplate morning and evening. For on the day when the last hour dawns, make Pharaoh's folk enter upon suffering most severe. So this verse has nothing, absolutely zero mention of the grave or punishment in the grave. It has punishment for the people, for Pharaoh, morning and evening, and the scholars that wants to scare you, wants you so paranoid about being tortured in the grave, or either follow them or being tortured in the grave. They use this verse that has, this is the most used verse that is specifically talks about Pharaoh. And it talks about punishment in the morning and punishment in the evening. To tell us that, the Quran means the grave in the morning and punishment in the grave in the evening. Okay? So this is one verse they use. The other verse, the most other common verse that they use, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. I will translate according to Yusuf Ali here. But as for him who shall turn away from remembering me, his shall be a life narrow scope. And on the day of resurrection, we shall raise him up blind. So, how is that punishment in the grave? Where does it say? A grave punishment. All it says, for those people that stayed away from remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their life will be miserable. And we will, Judgment Day, put him, and they will be blind. Yet, our brilliant scholars, some of them, want you to believe that this verse is a specific to convince you that there will be punishment in the grave. Honestly, it's up to you. You want to believe that twisted interpretation? Go ahead. But all I'm saying right now, those two verses that I mentioned are the most important two verses that they use for the punishment in the grave. But there are many verses that talks about punishment only Judgment Day. Not in the grave, not anywhere else. Just people die, they get resurrected, and on that day, there will be a day of reckoning. As the Quran, we all know, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةَ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul will taste death. وَإِنَّمَا تُوَفَّوْنَ, and you will be given أُجُورَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, and you will be given your rewards Judgment Day. That's what the Quran says. That is, so if there is a punishment in the grave, why there is every soul that is going to die and will be rewarded and will be accountable Judgment Day. So if you're going to be tortured in the grave, how are you going to be accountable in the thing? And I'll read the translation of this verse. كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. I'll read the translation of Yusuf Ali. Every human being is bound to taste death, but only on the day of resurrection will you be reacquitted in full for whatever you have done. Whereupon he that shall be drawn away from the fire and brought into paradise will indeed have gained the triumph. So we don't know anything till the resurrection day. This is what the Quran is saying. And it's clearly saying that you will be reckoning day, you will be accountable for what you have done. Another verse that proves that there is no torture in the grave or anything in the grave except a state of asleep. قالوا يا ويلنا. The Quran says, and they said, oh, ya waylana, means like, oh my God, what happened to us? من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا. Who raised us from the state we were in, like a state of sleep we were in. People being resurrected and saying, oh my God, who raised us from the state marqadina? It's like a deep state of sleep. هذا. Who has raised us from our place of deep sleep? And the same verse gives the answer. The same verse gives the answer. هذا ما وعد. This is what was promised by Ar-Rahman, the merciful, and the messengers were truthful. هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. So they're answering themselves. Oh, this is what God has promised us. And also the messenger told us that Judgment Day is coming. Another verse. There's numerous, many verses that really all it talks about is accountability, Judgment Day. And you probably know that. You've read it. I don't know if you ever came across one single verse in the Quran that says you're going to be punished in the grave, but there are plenty of verses that you've come through that you've concluded on your own that resurrection, accountability, paradise, or hellfire. And another verse, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارِ. Okay, I'll translate Yusuf Ali. And do not think that God is unaware of what the evildoers are doing. He but grants them respite until the day when their eyes will stare in horror. So basically, don't think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ignoring the evildoer. but he's given them a chance till the judgment day, when they will be accounted for the actions that they do. And another verse, وَعَرَضْنَا جَهَنَّمَ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَرْضًا. And we have shown hellfire that day, judgment day, for the non-believers in a clear stage. We will show it to them. And whoever does one atom of good will be rewarded that day, and whoever does an atom of bad things will be accounted for. And another verse that says, اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. So Judgment Day, people will come in, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell people, read your book. Read your book now. And your record will be clear for you to see, and that is what you're going to be judged based on. Basically, it means that if Allah now is telling you, read your book, so now you're going to see your deeds. So that's the first time you're going to see your bad deeds, you're going to be your good deeds. If you're going to be punished in the grave, if you're going to be being tortured in the grave, why all these verses that it's talking about that day you're going to be accountable, you're going to be judged, you're going to see your record, you're going to be, whoever did evil thing is going to be accountable, whoever did good things is going to be accountable on that judgment day. It is basically the day of graduation. Some people are going to be graduating to heaven, some people are going to be graduating to hellfire. And if you read Surah Al-Baqarah, there's plenty of verses that talk, فَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ. You were dead and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrected you. Then you died and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrected you. And plenty of time in the Quran say you will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That judgment day. So we need to ask ourselves a question. If there is a reckoning day, there is a day we will be responsible and we will be judged. And based on that judgment, people will get their book in their right hand and people will get their book in their left hand. That would be the first time that they will see what they have done, good things, bad things, mixed things. So why do we have a reckoning day if the punishment is going to be started in the grave? Or reward is going to be started in the grave. So basically in the grave is a state of death. Look, all this is speculation. We just read what we can, draw our conclusion from the Quran, what we can. There is not 100% certain anybody knows what is coming in the hereafter for us or what's going to happen in the grave. People that are certain, you're going to be punished, you're going to be this, they don't know. And even nobody knows. All we can say is we can make an educated conclusion based on what we have in the Quran. And the most authentic source that we have, factual source that we have that we can draw a conclusion from is the Quran itself. And there is nothing in the Quran that talks about the punishment of the grave. Just a twisted interpretation of 2 or 3 verses, that's not good enough. We need it clear. This is just a scary concept. There are books teaching kids about the punishment in the grave. I've seen it. I've seen books are sold to kids right here in Europe, in America, all over the Middle East. It's about to scare people, to create a paranoia for these kids that the concept of being punished in the grave. So we need to be really, really, really careful about what do we say. And I did this video for you and to remind you about, in my opinion, this is just a delusional thing, and there is nothing in the grave. There is a state of death. You will be resurrected, and then you will be accountable based on the Quran. Now, there are a lot of people, they can't, Everybody that believes in the punishment in the grave, they're going to be using the books of hadith. And the books of hadith written by fallible men, and that's just another subject. We're not going to go there, talk about it, how accurate, not accurate. But I need this video to get you to think about this subject of the torture in the grave. I believe it doesn't exist. It's just a delusional thinking. Theologian, imam, state, religious establishment wants to scare you about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so merciful and so kind and so full of loving. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the best for us. But this scare tactic that these people use, and they twist this beautiful religion, they twist it to scare us, to make us paranoid, and to make us submit to their theology and their will. I made this video to asking you to listen and take this subject very seriously and draw your own conclusion. Research, study, listen to both sides, and at the end, it's your own decision. Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum.